Hi there, I'm Julia Leeth, and I'm the pastor of Covenant Community Church in Vacaville, California. I'm so glad that you're here as we make a margin for the Lord. One of my dearest friends in the world, this lady right here, Rebecca Duvall, who makes me laugh like crazy. We are in so many ways the most opposite you could imagine. And yet we are dear, dear friends. We love the Lord together, and we just laugh like crazy, and she puts up with me. So Rebecca Duvall is going to share a little bit about who she is, so in case you don't have the pleasure of knowing her, but I promise you, you will love her.
Hello, so my name is Rebecca Duvall, and I am the administrative assistant and the bookkeeper here at the church. Been here in this position for a little over 3 years, maybe 3.5. Mm-hmm. Time flies. Mm-hmm. Before I came to the church to work, I was a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids, and before that, I did accounting and bookkeeping. And I was a stay-at-home mom for about 14 years. My oldest is, I was just talking to someone saying, I can't believe that next month she's going to be 25.
Oh my goodness.
And then I have another daughter who is 22, and then a son who's still at home who's 17. He's a senior. Been through a lot. I remember my kids were so tiny and just thinking that that was going to be my life forever. Just couldn't even think about them growing up. But now they're all becoming young adults, and it's strange kind of shifting my parenting from little to adult. But as I was growing up and as I was raising my kids when they were little, I didn't go to church. I was never around church. I actually thought church people were kind of scary and tried to avoid them because the thought of God was kind of scary to me because I thought that I knew I wasn't as good as I should be. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that if I just ignored it, that I wouldn't have to worry about it. But then when my kids were little in elementary school, and I was volunteering a lot, so I was working with a lot of different moms, and I found out that there was a group of moms at the school that prayed. They met every week, and they prayed for their students, they prayed for the staff, they prayed for the parents, and I worked with all of these moms all the time for several years. And I remember hearing about the group and being invited, but just kind of blowing it off like, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have time. And then it was the end of a school year, and a mom invited me, and I thought, oh, they'll forget by the time school starts next year, so I can say yes. So I'm like, yeah, that would be great. I'd love to join. Well, the next thing I know, that mom told all the other moms that were in that group, and they prayed for me all summer. Wow. As soon as school started, they were like, are you coming? And I avoided the very first meeting because I was just too busy. But I found myself going the second week of school, walking to this lady's house. I knew everyone that was there except for the ladies who owned the house that I was going to. So it felt kind of weird. And so many things going on in my mind, like, these ladies were going to be praying. What does that look like? I had so many scenarios going on in my head. But when I got there, they were just really sweet and kind and open and just shared their heart. They talked about God, but very casually, like it was just like they were talking about a best friend. And that was just, it really opened my heart, to hear them talk about God and as if it was just someone, a best friend, a dear, someone they just loved so deeply. And I think what really opened me up to it is because they not only prayed, but they shared how God had answered prayers from the past. So, and even though I was kind of freaking out, I kept going back. I kept going back. So these women, and I was not a Christian at this point at all. I'd never been to church. So after going for a couple months, one of the moms invited me to church, which was here at Covenant. And surprisingly, I wasn't scared. I think because I had asked like a million trillion questions that I could possibly ask to these ladies.
She asked a lot of questions. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
I like to know stuff. I like to know what's going to happen. I need to know all the scenarios so I can prepare. So I came and I just felt so comfortable and so welcome. And I remember totally not expecting it, but all of a sudden not everybody, but a lot of people stood up and they're singing. And I remember going, oh, this is awkward. Am I supposed to sing? This is weird. And the words are up on the screen. And all of a sudden, I just was so overwhelmed. I just started singing. And in my head, I'm like, what am I doing? But I'm just reading the words and singing. I just felt compelled to sing. I could not sing. And I'm still here. I haven't stopped coming. They can't get rid of me.
So it's just been one of the great, really pleasures for me to serve here, to be able to become such good friends with Rebecca. And we've traveled together. We go on great adventures together. We just laugh like crazy. It's just been just a blessing. And we always, I've been really enjoying these midweek moments, these making a margin, because we get to see and understand a little bit about how God is at work in people's lives, and each person has been different. And so that's been, for me, super encouraging. And I'm hoping that as you come to church on Sunday mornings at 9:30, or in this midweek moment at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights, that you would kind of hear these stories and go, oh, I don't know about God, but I kind of understand her story, or I know about God, and it's such an encouragement to see God's faithfulness in the midst. I mean, think about these women who prayed for Rebecca, and I can promise you they were praying for Rebecca before she even knew it, before she was even officially invited. And so that's always just just such a blessing for us to be able to hear that, and to be able to celebrate that, and to strive for that. If you've been part of these times, you'll know that we've been reading through the chronological Bible. And if you haven't done that yet, and you haven't started that, now is a perfect time to do that. We're in the New Testament, and so we're kind of hopping around a little bit. And this week, I wanted just to share with you very briefly, and then I'm going to ask Rebecca, and we're both going to kind of share on some important things to be able to see what God's doing. And if you've been reading through Mark, Mark is this call and basically a fleshing out of what it means to be a disciple, which is a follower of Christ. It's a call to discipleship. And there's all kinds of little parables and little examples about how God uses this a little bit, right, that we're willing to give, or we're hoping to give, or we're striving to give, and how God multiplies that to do a lot. And specifically, the parable of the mustard seed. It says in Mark 4, verses 30 to 32, "Again he said, 'What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It's like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all the seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch in its shade.'" And just this image of the smallest of the seeds, this teeny tiny minuscule seed that God grows just through his blessings, and it can be bigger than the height of a house. It's really quite astounding what God can do with just a very small beginning. And for me, as I was thinking about and resonating with that, I was wondering if you might be thinking in your own life and in your own heart how you might give some little bit specifically to the kingdom of God, specifically to the Lord, and see what he might be able to do. That's called stewardship. It's kind of a churchy word for stewardship. And I'm not a finance person. I was an English lit major. I hardly balance, and when I say hardly, I mean I don't balance my checkbooks. But my friend Rebecca here knows a little bit about stewardship. So, Rebecca.
So this is the time of year that churches all across the globe are going into their stewardship campaigns. And it's not just about giving how much you can give back to the church in a financial aspect, which that is very important. But there are many ways that God gives us gifts, and it's up to us to always be kind of taking note of what it is that God has given us and what he desires for us to give back. And one of those things that we can give back is of our time, which personally I think time is an extremely valuable commodity.
Really is.
Because once it's gone, it's gone. And I've learned over time and experience that time is very important in the way that what you're doing, how you're using yourself in the moment. Like, are you in the actual moment of where you are? Particularly when you're around people, which I think the majority of the time we're all around people, because just the people that we interact with daily, our family, our friends, when we're out in the community, and how important it is, especially today in the time that we're in, just to be fully engaged with the people that God puts in our life, whether it's our children or friends. It's just really important to be fully engaged. And I think I came to really appreciate that when, as I was coming to faith, I had a friend that I had met through my kids' school that would quite regularly invite me over for coffee, tea, or a snack, and I would never pass up any snacks. If you're going to fix it for me and then clean up after me, you're just going to feed me, yes, please. So I never said no, because that, to me, it was just like, somewhere to go outside of my home, a change of scenery. But then over time, as I was coming to faith, and God was just really bringing a lot of things up, and I just felt like I needed someone, safe people to talk to. I felt that she was one of these safe people, but I found that whenever I was there, she was always moving about, never fully engaged with me, kind of half listening, and that really became hard for me because I felt like I wasn't being heard, like I wasn't being validated of what, I wasn't, a lot of it, because I wasn't getting responses that I was hoping for, just kind of a dialogue. And because of course, I had a lot of questions. But I felt like she wasn't engaged with me. So that kind of taught me to, and being around other people, mainly my son, who is constantly telling me that, focus, put your phone down. Even I'm just watching a show with my son, and I'll look at my phone, and he happens to look at me. The second I look at my phone, he's like, Mom, why are you on your phone? Put it down, focus. Look at what we're watching.
So guilty.
Oh my goodness, it's my 17-year-old telling me to focus. So anyway, so to me, time is just really, really valuable, and we need to be all in with our time and just really be aware of how we're spending it and with who we're spending it.
So there's one element of stewardship, which is time, and a second element of stewardship is talent. And if you know me at all, you know that I am genuinely a nosy person. I love people. I like to hear the stories. I genuinely love people. And that helps because I like to have people around me. I have a high value for community and to know my people and to be known by them. I always describe myself as another one of my talents. I'm slightly above average cook. That's my kind of general description. I don't do anything fancy, but I know my way around the kitchen. And I love to invite more people than my house can actually contain, this kind of camaraderie of together. So I've got some skills. I'm comfortable with too many people in the house. I love people, and I'm a slightly above average cook. And so consequently, I use those in the ministry of hospitality. My hope always is that people, when they come to the church or when they come to my house, that they will know that they're loved, and that it won't just be a nice meal, although we hope it is, hope the chicken's not dry or whatnot, but that people will feel the grace and love of God as they come into my home. And I try to use the skills that I have. I try to be a good steward of the skills that I have to be able to further the kingdom. That You know, almost every party I've ever had, and I've been in ministry a long time, I will tell people, I want you to be here because I want you to know that you're loved by God. And I fuss and fawn over the stupid, you know, the paper napkins versus cloth napkins versus fresh flowers, you know, all of these things, because all of these little details remind people, even if they don't really understand it, that they are loved by God and by me. And so for me, you know, there's all kinds of things that I'm not, that I can't do. I just don't have the skill set, you know. I would never be the chair of finance. That would not be my jam at all. But Rebecca, if she were so inclined, or someone else in our church whose numbers inclined, would be great. But that's not those are not my gifts. My gifts are more around hospitality and people. So I think about, for me and for you, what's the one thing that kind of makes you different, and how can you use that for God? How can you use that to have people understand that God wants a relationship with them and that he loves them? So you probably have been to my house, and I'm hoping that you will, as you think about different ways, that you'll be thinking about ways that you can use your own gifts, your own talents, to be a good steward of God's gifts.
And then another way, which all the churches are campaigning right now, their stewardship campaigns, is asking everyone to prayerfully consider how much to give back to the church, and remembering and being thankful for everything that we have financially, that's all given to us by God. And back when I first started coming to church, I remember the first time, when I first came through the doors, it was stewardship time. And I remember my friend kept telling me, this isn't normal. They don't always ask, they don't always talk about money. This is not normal. But I was totally fine, because I'm a money
You're
person.
a money person.
And so I'm like, oh, I want to know more about, like, how does all this work?
Did you have more questions about it?
I'm sure that I did, yes. Lots of questions. I still do. But in the beginning, I didn't give in the beginning. I think because I was still getting used to it, even though I was comfortable with it. I didn't think that it was awkward or weird. It just made sense to me. It's, you know, every place has bills to pay. So, and having little kids and a very tight budget, because I was a stay-at-home mom, I just didn't think that, I thought everyone else gave, but I didn't need to. But then after a while, I felt that it was another, I think it might have been maybe a year or two later, it was another stewardship campaign. And I remember and it was always, I like how it's not about dictating how much to give. It's just to prayerfully consider, what is God calling you as the individual person, and who knows your situation, who knows what you have, what you will have, what your comfort level is, and knows the needs of the church. So it's between each person and God, or their family and God. So as I was praying about it, and I think it was the first time I was actually like, oh, I should pray about this. And God put it on my heart to give. So I started, and I talked to my husband about it, and he agreed, yes, let's, be consistent. So we consistently gave. And honestly, it was a small amount, but I felt like to be consistent, like that was what God was calling me at that time, just to be consistent with what I give, to be responsible, to make a promise, a pledge to the church, and to follow through with that. So we did that for a while, and then a couple of years later, I think it was, when my husband and I, our family, we were in the hardest financial situation we have ever been in. My husband was on disability, probably going to be forced to retire early for health, and so all of our income was, from what we were used to getting, was cut in half. But it seems like the expenses were piling up. It was just a really difficult time financially, and it was stewardship time again. And so praying about it, I remember I felt God calling me to, just very clearly. It's like sometimes you feel like when you're praying that God just is very, very clear. And those are usually the times where I'm like, I could not have heard that. That could not have been what I heard. But it was very specific. He was very specific that he wanted us to quadruple what we were given. And and this was just penny pinching times. I just couldn't imagine. And I used the excuse, I had this argument with God that my husband would never go with that and he would never agree. You know that. He would never, but it was just, just kind of helping me kind of process that. And people that he would bring alongside me in encouragement, gave me the courage and the strength to bring this to my husband, who comes out of my mouth and he just right away agrees. Like, I trust you, you do all of our money, and I trust that you know what God is calling you to do, and I trust that you will manage it. So we did, and I was very nervous. I'm usually, when I decide to do something, I'm usually pretty good, but I was very nervous going into this situation. And but over the next several months, it seemed like at the most dire moment for us financially, we'd go to the mailbox and there'd be some check. And it would just be, what is this? And because my husband was going through a lot of health issues with dealing with all sorts of different like workman's comp situations and with his work, and it would just be like, oh, this situation was resolved, and so this is to make up for that, or this is like, it's just like all these like back things that we had no idea were going to be coming at all, had no expectations. But suddenly these things just kept happening, and it got us through until several years later when it was finally resolved. Wow. And it was just really really gave me a better understanding that it's so important, like you were saying about that mustard seed, that when he gives you that little, like, to hang on to that and to trust that God will do miracles with it. He will do mighty things with it, and we never know what that's going to look like. We don't know how he's going to work that out. I mean, I had no idea how that would be financially. I was really expecting to just really struggle and not know what to do, but he provided. And it was just so amazing.
That's awesome.
So if you're not giving to a church, if you are giving to a church, I would just ask that you just prayerfully consider, just ask God what it is that he desires of you to give, and not always just of your treasures, but of your time, how he is calling you to give of your time to the people that he surrounds you with, and what gifts has he given you, like Julia with her hospitality, and she just loves people, and that just makes such a great impact. How is he calling you to give back what he's given you of your treasures?
And so for me, as I have kind of grown a little bit in this area over the last many years, there were so many years where I was pretty inconsistent in all of these different areas, and I tried to just make an incremental shift, each year to try to, just move. Maybe I wasn't doing what I felt like I was supposed to do, or even what Scripture said, but to just try to move incremental, to take some small step to be faithful to what I felt like God was calling. And so maybe God is calling you to take some small step in either, in any of these areas, in time, talent, or treasures, that he might be able to do something really spectacular. When I do the communion, the words of institution for communion, the prayer that I often say, it may sound familiar, is that you take these ordinary elements and do an extraordinary work in our lives. And that would be my prayer for all of us as we're trying to prayerfully consider what God's calling us to in this time of stewardship, that he might take these ordinary little steps and do something extraordinary for his purpose, not only in our lives as we say yes, but in the lives of the families and ministry of this church, and in the ways that God uses us in this wonderful part of the world and beyond. My hope is that you'll really, really step out in faith to do some small thing so God can do something great. I'm so glad that you took a moment to hear what the Lord had put on our hearts. I hope you'll look in the mail for your stewardship letter, and each week for the next couple weeks we'll have a stewardship testimony, and we'll have this opportunity as God's people to say yes to God. We'll see you again on Sunday mornings at 9:30, and we'll have our midweek moment at 7 p.m. every Wednesday night. And you can participate either on live stream via Facebook or in person, and we sure would love to see you. But we hope you have a great day and that you are seeing God's good blessings. Thanks so much for showing up today. See you next time.